Can you hear me now?
Yes. I can hear
Okay,
you.
great. All right. Welcome to the third Independent Salary Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, April 27th. We will be meeting this evening from 6 to 8 p.m. The Independent Salary Commission wants to thank the community members and leaders watching this meeting. They value your input and feedback. I'm going to turn it over to Liam now, who's briefly going to discuss the logistics. Next slide, please.
Hey everyone, so this meeting is being recorded for later viewing. A copy of this recording will be posted on the Salary Commission website and just events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the top right side of the screen. We also have ASL and Spanish interpretation available. At this meeting, you can access this feature with the interpretation button located on the menu controls at the bottom of the screen. Instructions on how to access the interpreter are also in the chat. Commissioners, please make sure that your chat settings are set to everyone, so folks listening in today can follow along. And so just a heads up again, your chat is also part of the public record. Community members listening in, we have the same community feature available. Please submit questions or comments in there. We may not be able to answer all the questions today, but they will be part of the meeting record. If you would like to submit additional public comments, you can access our comment form online, website, or by emailing transition at woodlandboard.com. Give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. And for those of you in the city building, if you could speak closer to the mic, we can, your voice is very soft. Thank you. So in your meeting packet materials for today's meeting, you received the meeting minutes for from April 11th. And I just want to ask really quickly, are there any edits or changes that you, the commissioners, would like to make? If not, could someone make a motion to vote on the meeting minutes using the fist to five method? So please indicate in the chat your fingers, which represent the strength of your yes vote. Great. Great. Okay, adoption to the meeting minutes. I'm now going to turn it over to Commissioner Gill, who is going to talk a little bit about the agenda. Commissioner Gill, you're on mute.
Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So you all received a public comment report in your email. Today, we have received 6 public comments. 2 of those we received since we last met. Has people had a chance to review those before this meeting? Okay. I read both of them. They were very long and lengthy. The first one from April 11th seemed to reflect more on fiscal responsibility, which seems to be a theme from all the previous comments. But the second one was more, it was harder for me to understand what they were talking about, to be perfectly honest. But it had to do with shared staff. Does anybody have any comments about that? Okay, I'm not hearing anybody.
Commissioner Martinez has her hand raised.
Okay. Sorry, I
Yeah.
have a very small screen, so I can't see
No
everything.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I mean, it was very helpful and a nuanced comment that I wanted to make sure we either have clear expectations on is that something that would be within the scope, or really that is part of the city administration, because that would take for us to take into account or in consideration the staffing and the salaries of staffing. That would take a different approach to methodology that we have discussed so far, in taking also into account those salaries. So I wanted to make sure that both us as commissioners, but also the public has clear expectations of the scope and what would be included as part of the data for us to establish the salaries.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely, there was definitely some things mentioned in there that specifics about staffing ratios that I was not aware of. So I would love to have more research on that. Anybody else? Again, I can't see the chat hand raising.
It does not look as though there is any other. Nope. Commissioner Angers, did you have a comment?
Yeah, there is actually a document that we received, and I forget what the document is called, and I'll find it. I was looking at it yesterday, but it is surrounding the level of staffing that the original commission thought would be, and they had like different levels, like a lower level of staffing and a higher level of staffing that they thought. They also had some proposed salaries surrounding this. So I'll see if I can find that document real quick. But sorry about that. But there was some information on that about like estimates about how big that the different offices would be and how much shared staffing that there would be between commissioners, because there's the 4 districts, and then the commissioners are potentially sharing staffing within those districts.
Awesome. I will go back and look at those. Very useful. Anybody have any other comments?
I do. I think my hand is up. Oop.
We can see.
ahead.
I think that, again, this is one of those things that I think Commissioner Martinez is right. We need to be really clear with the public that that falls outside of our scope in terms of determining the staffing levels. Those are the things. I think that's in the Charter Commission document, actually, the information on staffing and how the offices would be set up and who would have what kinds of staff support. And I think those are valid points in that letter. And I thought that the letter was really well thought out and respectful, but I thought most of it fell outside of our actual mission, which is to determine the appropriate wages for, again, the elected officials. And it is tricky because, again, we don't have a budget for it, but I think that the staffing issues surrounding those offices and how they're set up and where they're located is not our concern. And I think we want to make sure that nobody gets confused and think that we're also figuring out huge budgets and how this all works. And our salary information is based on overall cost to the city, because it really isn't in terms of how those jobs are going to function. And those are going to grow over time too. I mean, they may start out with too small an office to begin with, or smaller staffs, and decide over the years, as the city can afford it, increase the staff support. But I thought, again, his input was very useful in terms of overall, interest, but it was not, most of it fell outside of what we can possibly determine, or should determine, actually.
Commissioner Angers?
I would add like a little bit of nuance to that, where we have an existing budget, and if we're looking at fiscal responsibility as one of the things, we're not increasing the amount that we're spending, in a huge way. That if we're looking at existing salaries and you think like, okay, every commissioner currently has 10 to 15 folks on their staff, and it's projected that they're probably going to have like between 3 and 6, depending on the shared staffing. That if you're looking at that total number and it's, I think it's like 4% of the budget, like the city budget, based on the Bureau of Human Resources data that we were getting. Like if you're giving each of the 12 commissioners a large salary, that's a smaller pool for the staffing levels. And so it's important to consider, like, we're not determining what those levels are going to be for those folks, but it also is something that we should take into consideration as part of our directive, in my.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, this is probably a question for Barb. Presumably a lot of those staff people now are in support of the bureaus and have technical expertise as a liaisons to the bureaus. Theoretically, do those positions then go to the bureau, go to the bureaus or to the city manager's office that are now working as liaisons that won't, the new council members won't have those responsibilities? So will those positions then revert somewhere else, or will those FTE either move or they will stay in place? And what kind of experience do those positions require? I would assume something like for environmental resources or something like that, they're going to have specific training if they're working with that particular bureau.
I don't know the answer to that, Commissioner Johnson. I don't know if there are going to be, subject matter experts among the commissioner's staff, or if those subject matter experts will be part of the city administrator's staff. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid.
You want Barbara?
Just to follow up on the comment about what's in scope and what's out, just a quick point of clarification for Jamie. Quick point of clarification for Jamie. I think we can easily put something on the website that provides a little bit more detail in terms of what's in the scope with regard to the salary commission and what's not. Would that be helpful? Yes.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay. Yes, we could certainly provide more information. In truth, there is one single paragraph in charter that provides the scope. Everything else is basically outside of that scope. However, what you've been talking about is a little nuanced in terms of a methodology towards reaching a salary decision. If the commission certainly decided that it was an important data point about the overall budget, that could be something that you consider. It doesn't, I don't know, but it's not like you won't be setting those determinations, obviously. And to answer Commissioner Johnson, the current staff in council offices are hired by the commissioners who have been elected, and they serve that commissioner. And so once that commissioner is no longer in elected office, those employees are no longer employees of the city unless they apply for and are offered another job within the city, which many elected staffers do try to do that. They end up maybe in bureaus that they were overseeing, but that is part of a public process. They aren't naturally kind of automatically absorbed into the city.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, to Commissioner Gill's a question about the comment. For me, the spirit of it is a request for us to take into consideration those aspects of the general budget. So I'm thinking that if, in order to create clarity for the public, is not only information about the scope, even if it's very brief, but it could be added. What are our considerations and what is out of scope, but also informing decision making, so that also the public knows that it is effective to submit comments, and that the public is heard and their comments and information are influential.
Got it. We'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sampson?
I was just reading back through, because there was also within that document, or that public comment, there was something about the salary and staffing for the position of council president. And I was hoping to get clarification on I've read it a couple of times and I'm just trying to follow, like, will one of the council members be voted by the rest as a council president? Like, is that one of the elected positions? And is there something about that one of the 12, if I'm reading it correctly, that we need to know around their roles and responsibilities that could warrant different compensation?
Yes, that is correct, that they will be voting very likely on a council president and potentially a council vice president. Those roles and responsibilities are currently being deliberated upon, and decisions are being made internally with the city for, in terms of like code changes and developing those roles and responsibilities. We expect to have a firm draft of those roles and responsibilities for council president and vice president for you by your June 13th meeting, as we anticipate it will be something you'll want to consider in terms of a different step of pay potentially, if that's what you decide.
Thank you.
Great. I recommend that we move to the next agenda, to the agenda. Commissioner Gill, and many of these topics we can talk about further in the methodology discussion.
Sure. Let me just conclude that it's just a reminder to the commission and the public listening in that we will hold verbal public comment for the first time tonight. As co-chairs, Commissioner Engers and I have decided to put it at the end of the agenda so the public could provide input after our hearing discussion. We have also chosen to limit comment times to 2 minutes each. Does everyone agree with that approach, or would they like to discuss that further? All right. Let's get to the agenda. All right. There we go. I'm going to take a second to go over our meeting agenda for today. We will spend the first half of our meeting workshopping the foundational documents. Then we will be asked Barb some questions related to research she has provided us. Hopefully you all read the material ahead of time, because Barb will not be providing a presentation this time. Finally, later in the meeting, we'll be workshopping the methodology as how we set salaries before we open it to public comment. Please keep in mind that we need to get through the methodology discussion tonight. So if it takes longer than we expect, please be prepared to consider extending our meeting time tonight. As long as we have a quorum of 3 voting members, we will continue. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amber to discuss the foundational documents.
Great. Next slide. So today we're going to review the bylaws, the suggestions you made to the bylaws, the values, and the community engagement framework. And we really want agreement and approval on the changes to the bylaws and the community engagement framework that was developed with Commissioner Martinez and Commissioner Cooney. Next slide, please. So again, at our last meeting, we approved the working agreements and the outcomes, but today we're going to talk about the values, the bylaws, and the community engagement framework. Next slide. So in our last meeting, you all had approved the FISTA 5 method to assess agreement and to allow the committee members to express the quality of your yes vote. Proposals, just a reminder, proposals will be adopted and reflect each of your positions. During our meeting with the chairs, we agreed that we'll continue to seek consensus if there's a significant number of you that, have a one finger. And just a reminder, friendly reminder, your position will be recorded in the meeting minutes. And so the changes that you see on the screen have to do with the various decisions and the use of the FISTA 5 method. And there was one other change to the bylaws. If you can go to the next slide. The bottom bullet below or above the bullet move to adopt is the bullet that was changed, which is essentially that we would use the FISTA 5 method. So I just want to use the FISTA 5 method to see if we're all in agreement with those changes, and those changes accurately reflect the decisions and the proposals that you made.
May I just ask a quick question on this one? This is Maura Cooney. I wanted to double check. I know as an alternate that I am not a voting member. In terms of our discussions and meetings, should I still continue to contribute my Fist of Five input, knowing that it's not officially part of the vote?
So, sorry, go ahead, Jamie. I can tell you were going to say something.
Go ahead, Amber.
So the vote is, so technically the vote is for the voting members, but I'm sure all of the other commissioners would absolutely want you to contribute your thoughts. So technically, in terms of the vote, in order to pass something, it is based on the full commissioners.
You're all done with the smell?
I think perhaps instead of the Fist of Five, Commissioner Cooney could give a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the chat in terms of, you know, support for a thing. That's a really good point. So thank you for bringing it up. We certainly want you to actively participate and not feel excluded from, you know, being able to offer how you feel about a thing moving forward. The truth is none of these are, I mean, these are votes. Obviously, you're agreeing on some documents. The only real official vote is going to be around your salary proposal and what you know, send out to the public. And that we'll have to be very careful with that one, but please offer your, thumbs up. Gotcha.
Great. So the bylaws pass.
Who's talking?
Next slide, please. So
Just a quick comment. I think Commissioner Ingers, you're unmuted and there is voices that are coming through.
thank you. In your meeting materials, we've included edits based on the last meeting to the values document. The changes included changes to anti-racism and equity values. Please note that I moved fiscal responsibility up on the values document. So I'm going to give you a moment to review those changes. For those listening in, the changes were to anti-racism was we support the need to create an anti-oppressive pay, which works to dismantle existing systems of pay that negatively impact non-dominant groups. We recognize that wealth can be healing in community, and it is at the core of financing social change. For equity, the proposal was, we are committed to addressing equity to ensure livable wages are adopted to promote people from all incomes who are attracted to public service and careers in elected governmental institutions, not just individuals who are independently wealthy. There was also a suggestion around fiscal responsibility, which states finding resources required to adequately staff and deliver equitable programs and services without asking community members for more by divesting and repurposing what has already been given. I'd like to pause for a moment to see if everyone concurs on those proposals. Can we have a yay? Great.
I
Go ahead.
On the fiscal responsibility, I'm just a kind of a question. When it says to the phrase required to adequately staff and deliver equitable programs and services without asking community members for more. We have a lot of bond measures, one coming up to renew the children's budget support. I'm wondering if some people will see that as saying that we shouldn't be going to the voters to support programs, bond measures, levies, and that sort of thing, because that is asking the community members for more. beyond the regular resources. Is there a different way we could say that? That's just kind of a concern of mine because we are always asking, we usually have ballot measures to support a number of different important projects, and that could be conflated with that particular, I think, in some people's minds.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Ingers?
I think since these are the values of the salary commission, and 4 out of the 6 comments that we've gotten are about not increasing the budget for these. This would be like in line with the values of the commission. I don't think a community member would view them as something that the city was representing, but I understand your point.
Okay, as long as it's not a concern, it's fine with me. I just want to make sure, but that explanation makes sense to me. Thank you.
Commissioner Martinez?
Thank you. I think that maybe I hear Commissioner Johnson's point there, that is there's a moment or a place of tension. So would it be in better alignment and more clear if we say without asking most vulnerable community members for more?
Commissioner Johnson, would that be clear?
No, I don't think that I think it's fine the way it is. I think because it's within the scope of our committee and not overall city budget development, that I think I'm fine with that. I think to get into making it more specific, I think actually isn't necessary. I think it's good the way it is at this point.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I could give it 5 fingers now that I've had a good explanation for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So could the commissioners put their vote in the chat? Thank you. Fabulous. All right. The values are approved. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Cooney, and then we will follow with Commissioner Martinez, who worked on the community engagement framework in a subcommittee meeting. Next slide.
Okay, I think this is my part. To make
Yeah.
sure I'm correct. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and read the points we have here. We expect that our community engagement process will be responsive to the needs and concerns of the community, taking their input into account when making decisions, leverage processes, tools, and opportunities to foster proactive and accessible learning, sharing, and understanding, inform Portland residents about requirements for establishing salaries, promote transparency and public trust in local government. So we're definitely wanting to acknowledge that our community is giving us feedback. We want to make sure we're taking that into consideration and honoring what people are bringing to us, as this is their representation. And transparency obviously is part of that. So yeah, any questions on these points?
Great. Next slide. So in the next slide, these were some objectives that were included in the community engagement materials. There were 2 changes that Commissioner Cooney and Commissioner Martinez had suggested. And what they suggested were pertain to the objectives, which were to center equity as a tactic and social justice as a goal. And they also suggested changing the last objective by emphasizing that we will ensure the salaries are established through the lenses of fiscal responsibility, anti-racism, integrity, transparency, and understanding of community dynamics.
Thank you, Amber. And I want to highlight connected to the conversation about fiscal responsibility. That part of the conversation Commissioner Cooney, Amber, and I had also included our sense of fiscal responsibility, not only considering affordability, which is crucial and typically the main thing, but also that we are funding the charter to set it for success and to not underfund it in ways that would set it for failure. It can fail for many reasons, but that we are resourcing in terms of salaries in ways that set the charter for success in the spirit of the charter, the outcomes and expectations.
Fabulous. Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. If you can move to the next slide. And Commissioner Martinez, we discussed the tactics. It would be wonderful if you could walk through the tactics.
Yes, thank you. So we talked about some of these activities that we want to start planning from now so that we can start coordinating with key community partners. We want to have educational presentations. We would like to craft together emails and connect with the community with good old emails, to have to work with the city in multilingual toolkits that not only can be distributed in printed form, but also available online, to have short multimedia, multilingual videos with closed captions in partnership with culturally specific nonprofits, community-based organizations, to have fact sheets that are digestible and accessible, to engage in social media ad buys, to also engage with a younger part of our community that are very active in social media, and to engage with communities that usually have been underrepresented, that are connected to religious groups such as churches and organizations through a variety of tools. So these are the first collection of tactics that we discussed.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Next slide. So thank you so much, both of you, for great strategies. So the community, this is a general outreach plan. So the community engagement, it needs to start as soon as possible in order for us to meet the June deadline. So you have to, don't forget, you have to provide a recommendation in June. So we have to start as soon as possible. The other thing is we'll need to have another subcommittee meeting to discuss what goes in these tactics that Commissioner Martinez just described. But for now, I would like to pause and see if there is agreement on the community engagement framework so we can get started. So I'll pause for reflections, and then if there are no other changes, it would be great to have a vote.
Can I make a quick comment? Oh,
Please.
I see Commissioner Johnson wants to go first. I'll go after.
This is just a quick question. Does the city have resources for the social media ad buy? Have they committed to that?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Johnson. This is what I want to talk about, which is I will need to talk to the transition team about what is possible in terms of our resources, capacity, timelines. As you are all aware, the Independent Salary Commission is one very important part of a much bigger transition. And so there are multiple buckets of work happening at the same time. There's also multiple points of community engagement happening in June. And so we are certainly, as a transition team, prepared to do a variety and to invest in a variety of community engagement strategies in June, particularly. But at this point in time, I am unclear on A, what that budget looks like, and B, what our capacity looks like in terms of being able to deliver these very specific tactics. So I'll want to work with whoever the subcommittee continues to be, Commissioner Martinez, Commissioner Cooney, on exactly what is achievable and viable, how we can bring in those resources. And I also want to remind this commission that we can go farther if each of you are willing to contribute to this. So if we're going to be creating videos, for example, it would be amazing if the commission was willing to, speak in those videos so that we could record them, those kinds of things. And I also want to just give everyone a heads up that we may be able to go farther as well, as if we attach our community engagement with other parts of the transition engagement, so that we are going out to community collectively and and not kind of going to the same community populations and neighborhoods with a variety of different questions over time. So we'll just need to have more conversation about how we can achieve that, but we would love to get as much of this as done as possible, for sure.
Any other thoughts, comments? So I don't know who went first. So Commissioner Cooney and then Johnson.
I just wanted to ask, connected to that, the idea of working with other commissions, if there are folks who are also have been given a role as a subcommittee or subcommission, excuse me, in terms of community engagement, would it make sense to try to connect with the other folks as well, just to see if we could collaborate a bit more?
Yes, that is definitely the idea. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
No, please.
So I'm actually working with the IDC Commission and with another, with the GTAC, and that is the idea, that we would work collectively to leverage the investments and leverage the communication. Commissioner Johnson, you put your hand down. Do you still want to comment?
No, you just answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. All right. If there's no other reflections, it would be great to have a 5-5 vote in the chat on approving the community engagement plan. Fabulous. Okay, the engagement passed. It's approved. So now I'm going to turn it over. Next slide, please. So now, as was mentioned previously, you received quite a bit of research and analysis by Barb. Now you have the opportunity to ask questions of her based on the research that she provided. So I'm going to stop talking. We have about 10 minutes on this agenda item. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, Commissioner Sampson.
Thank you. Once again, thank you for all of your research. I was hoping so you pulled the mayor and council member rates for those other cities that were requested, so in more the Pacific Northwest region. And I was curious if we could get those rates for that original list from the March 28th request that we submitted. So that's more on a national level, but to see those salaries as well. And then along those same lines, wondering how at the city you geographically adjust, if you use ERI or a different tool to do that. And if so, if we could see those geographically adjusted as well. And then I also, I know, if any of those other cities have the council president or vice president type roles, gathering if they pay any differently for those positions, might be good to gather now so that when we learn more about those roles at the city and if we think they warrant additional compensation, we can see what others are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely, we can provide that. We do use ERI for our geographic differentials, and so can absolutely add that for next time.
Are there any other questions for Barb? If not, we're going to get a few more minutes to use for the methodology discussion. Nope. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to discuss a proposed methodology and structure Commissioner Engers had for setting salaries. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Engers now to discuss a proposed methodology and approach.
Yeah, so we also had a co-chair meeting, Commissioner Gill and I, and we discussed a methodology for setting salaries, because there's lots of data points we could use, but just a framing structure that we could all agree upon, which is why I was really glad that we spent so much time working on our values, because I think the methodology could be tied to the values, and you can use both qualitative and quantitative research, but we already have a lot of data points that we can slot into the values, and then also figure out what other information we need to come up with a proposal. And so do we want to go to the next slide? So basically what I was thinking was using each value and figuring out what data points we would need based on that value to inform the decision. And so, for example, for anti-racism, we've gotten information about anti-oppressive pay as being part of that value. And so I think, Commissioner Sampson, that you were the one that brought it up last time, but the idea of not using or not relying solely on market data from other cities, if we're just perpetuating a pay structure that only allowed folks who were in dominant communities to continue in those positions because of the wages that they were paying. Anti-racism could also take a lot of different forms. I don't know, Amber, if we wanted to spend the time on each value right now to think about what kinds of data or speakers that we wanted. Is it worthwhile to go through each one right now? Okay. So, okay, first of all, before we jump right into this, does that kind of methodology jibe with everybody? Does anyone have any thoughts, concerns, or things that they would want to add, knowing what we're thinking? Okay, I see thumbs, so we're gonna go with it. I love it. Okay, does anti-racism, besides the anti-oppressive pay, are there other parts about our value of anti-racism that you would want reflected in either data that we're requesting or speakers that we're inviting? I was thinking speakers around anti-racism and equity would definitely come up as more of like a qualitative than a quantitative factor.
Could you clarify or repeat the question? Not sure that I'm following.
Yeah, so when I was just going through the information that we'd already received, I couldn't think of a quantitative value, or not value. Going to anti-racism, I thought most of the data that we would receive might be in the form of qualitative data from like speakers or experts versus any of the data that we've currently received. And I also personally did not formulate a good question or data point that the Bureau of Human Resources could help us with.
So for example, Commissioner Martinez, there's two questions on the table with regard to anti-racism, that value being tied to your methodology. So one, is there specific data? You did at one of your previous meetings identify a comparative analysis as a data tool to assess discrimination in pay, an unconscious bias approach. That's one. The second question the second part of Commissioner Anger's question is, are there experts, other speakers that you would like to invite that would inform or contribute to your analysis around the salary structure? That's the question.
Thank you for helping me. And I have a list of folks, so I can support populating the box and speakers and experts in the next few days.
Great.
Okay, probably next slide. I think a lot of this, the anti-racism and equity will maybe some of the same speakers.
I
So
do
this
want
is-
to offer one suggestion, sorry, that I want to make sure the group is aware of. I think it speaks pretty specifically, maybe to equity as well, but also anti-racism. You may or may not be aware that there's a lot of conversation happening at the state level about legislator pay and how low it is and how non-supportive it is of diverse populations. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware that there's a coalition called Opportunity to Serve Oregon that has formed, that is dealing with this issue. And so they are an organization that we could reach out to identify particular people to come and speak to you if that would be something that you would like us to do.
Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up. Thank you, Jamie. Okay. Yes, so around equity, some of the things that just like I was literally just brainstorming. These are not necessarily what we have to go with, and I would love to hear other data points as well. But definitely that some of the qualitative data that I would love to hear about around equity would be just testimony from underrepresented candidates or potential candidates about any financial barriers or other barriers that they've experienced, and just their experience, you know, running for public office. I'd also love, I don't know if this is something we want to talk about, but if there are differences in like pay between the different regions based on like the cost of living or like who's represented in those regions. And also we do have information around like a livable versus thriving wage already. And yeah, that was what I was thinking around equity. Does anybody else have anything right off the top? We can obviously think about this more deeply or do some research on our own and come back, but I know we're on a tight timeline.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, I need a little more understanding about when you talk about people who run for office, the challenges that they've encountered. Are these people that are currently in office or people that ran for office and are either were not reelected or no longer were interested in running for office? I'm just curious as to who you were thinking of when you brought that up.
Yeah, I think I was thinking specifically about like Emerge Oregon, which is an organization that helps particularly women run for office in Oregon. And they also have a fairly large, like I think I'd have to look at their website again, but they have, I think like 30 or 40% of the women that they're going through their program are also identify as women of color. And, you know, if you're looking at who underrepresented groups might be, like that might be an organization that could speak to some of the things that we're talking around equity. But I think there like definitely are going to be other groups, including potentially the Opportunity to Serve that Jamie just mentioned. And if anyone else knew any other groups, that's just one I'm familiar with personally.
I think one of the I'm sorry, I can't quite think of the right word. One of the hopefully the outcomes from having people running from smaller districts just within their districts is it will be more affordable to mount a campaign because it won't be citywide campaigns. And so that's out of the, I think that, again, that came out of the overall methodology for the charter. Perhaps maybe there's somebody from that group again who could come back and talk about that specific piece of how they anticipate this being a more affordable option for people running for office, and how, if we want to sort of have some expert thought on that in terms of the motivation for putting that in, and how that would work. How does it work in other cities when you have smaller groups, people running from smaller groups for office? So that might be something to think about. I mean, because it's an explicit outcome that they're hoping for, is that more people can run for office if they don't have to run across the city.
Commissioner Martinez, and then I just want to recap the three types of individuals to testify.
Thank you. I would also reach out to the Center for Women's Leadership at PSU. A lot of the curriculum for the program includes civic engagement and public office. There's also the Latino leadership program from the Metropolitan Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. That would be, that also, it is mostly about business, but there's a lot of intersection with community leadership. And I believe that United Oregon also has a leadership academy that is also focused on civic engagement and public office participation.
That's great. Okay, I'm just going to recap the different organizations. Emerge Oregon, opportunity to serve. Someone from the Charter Commission, the Center for Women Leadership at PSU, Latino Leadership, essentially the Hispanic Chamber, and United Oregon. That's a great list. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about on this, on the equity, Commissioner Ingers?
I mean, those are just like me brainstorming. So there could be other data points that occurred to other commissioners that or members of the public that I would love to include, but not on this slide. And we did get a Q&A about what I was mentioning between the difference of pay between regions. And did I mean across districts that will be created because there's significant variance in income across the city? I actually don't have anything particular in mind, but I did think it was something to bring up, because there is a significant variance in income across the city. But I think we could move to the next slide. Okay, so the next. Fiscal responsibility. Okay, so this one we actually do have quite a bit of data around. And this was what I mentioned, where I also shared a link in the chat that comes from the information we got from the BHR for the last meeting, where the city charter formed I think it's the, one second, it is the city budget office put together a cost summary and what they thought each of the offices, how they might be structured as far as size compared to their current one. And so my thought here would be around taking the current pay and budget for the mayor's office, well, the mayor, the commissioner, the 4 commissioners, and an auditor, and like what percentage of the budget that represents, and either just looking at that pool of money as like something to focus on, whether that be as the amounts with like the cost of living adjusted, or if we're looking at it, I don't want to, basically what I was thinking was currently I think I did, the added them up, but it was like about $19.6 million is all the costs, which represents about like 3.9% of the city's budget. And just making sure that any proposals that we were making were taking those current numbers into consideration, while also considering that this current staff sizes for the commissions, I think they're between like 10 and 15 staff members, depending on the office. And the new proposal from the city budget office had them at somewhere like, I think like six something, 6 to 8, or no, that's the wrong one. This is council clerk. Anyways, the document, it was interesting. They had a lot of numbers already kind of proposed around like what they thought the staff could be. And fiscal responsibility might also, yeah, looking at the current percentages. Anybody else have anything that they were thinking about for around fiscal responsibility? Okay.
Commissioner Ingers, I was just gonna say, I think I agree with what you're saying, like looking at current state and then potentially looking at what would that number be if we just applied those cost of living adjustments that didn't happen. And then I assume that a secondary source of data will be looking at the market and the comparables that Barb and her team are working on, and just kind of like playing out some different scenarios of current state, how much of the city budget it is, and then future state with additional council members added, and different ways that we could take those salaries from where they currently are. And then I think you said you added up to 19 million.
My math could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. But right now in the document, it says % of city operating budget for like those three added together. I think it's only 0.4%.
Yeah, I had 3.98.
Okay.
So if you round it up, yes, 4%.
Okay, sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay,
Can I ask
oh, please go ahead.
Can I ask a clarifying question about what you're asking for? Because I want to make sure that we're have enough information to put together a draft for you all to consider moving forward. Are you thinking about the totality of each council office's budget? Or are you singling out the salary of the elected within those offices? Because obviously the auditor's office is a very large, its own basically bureau. The mayor's office is much larger, you know, there are different sizes, and it's also about other staff, which is not within your purview.
No, yeah, I think I was thinking about like within the entire budget, what percentage the commissioners, mayor, and auditor staff, or not staff, only they're within that percentage, which I think was something like
Just their salaries.
well, I mean, you take it into consideration. Yes. And I see Commissioner Johnson, you have your hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to me, and I think we talked about this at one of our first meetings, that the auditor's role isn't really changing. And so really the only effect on that particular budget, this staffing structure isn't likely to change. So it's really only the auditor's salary that in that particular area that we need to sort of try to juggle what the FTE might look like. Because I don't think there's any plan to change that particular function.
When I was in the document that I shared in the chat, it looks like the auditors are like the budget that they're proposing. It looks like there might be up to 7 additional employees in that office for the city administrator's office.
Okay.
But based on that, the city administrator's salary anywhere from where it currently is at 201,000 all the way up to 260,000 on the high end. Not that we have to use those numbers, but that was.
I was talking about the auditor, not the administrator.
Okay.
So that, I don't think there's anything we have to worry about in terms of, and when we're looking at fiscal responsibility, aside from the auditor's actual salary, in terms of looking at how all these other positions might shift and the size of the offices will change. I think the auditors, I mean, they may choose to add more staff, but I don't think we don't have to factor their staffing change in the way that we have to think about in terms of the council. I don't think.
Yeah, so that was the data point that I had around fiscal responsibility. And then I think the next would you mind moving to the
Next
next
slide.
slide? Yeah, I think it's transparency. So that we're having an open and transparent conversation right now. This is transparency in action. I did not have any data points around this, except to, you know, make sure that we are continuing to listen to the public comments. And yeah, we could probably move to the next slide, unless anyone has anything else around transparency.
I did want to, sorry, just based on fiscal responsibility and where you're going with your data points, Commissioner Engers.
Mhm.
The current offices, you could choose to invite memos or some, you know, input from the current seated electeds and the auditor's office. I know the auditor's office did reach out, interested in providing whatever information this body might want from them. I did suggest that putting together a memo about their roles and responsibilities and their opinion about, you know, what you could consider for setting the salary for the auditor to us. We haven't received that yet. Obviously, you would have received it, but that is an option for you as well.
The more the merrier.
To the point of transparency, I wanted to, I haven't had to look for the information online because I'm participating in the commission. How easy it is for the public to find all of these materials, to find information about what we're doing, when the meetings are, to make sure that we are getting folks to join and to comment. Do we know?
Well, yes, everything is posted on our website. We have all of the meeting calendars and the meetings pre-scheduled ahead of time, so they're all up on our website. We also post all the materials and the agenda 1 week before the meeting, in the same cadence that we send to you all. So when you are receiving your information, the public is receiving the information at the same time. And post meeting, it takes us probably about a day or two to turn around the meeting minutes, a recording of the meeting, and any additional materials.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm thinking that I would like to then have in our next agenda for our meeting, Commissioner Cooney and Amber, to add a strategy for this information to be disseminated, and not just, you know, people can find it, but we are actually sending out invitations to the different organizations and community.
Thank you. Noted.
We do, just to add one more thing before we move on, we do a fair amount of external communications, like sending out newsletters and stuff, but there's lots of ways we could be better. So I definitely look forward to some additional conversation and tactics for that.
And I would actually, if we move to the next slide, as far as our values go, I think this is actually where that might fall under with communication. And then, yes, that's, I had under here like public outreach, and then also listening to both the qualitative data and statements from the public. So appreciate you, Commissioner Martinez, and Commissioner Cooney being involved in that. But that's all I had for communication. So.
Next slide.
And then as far as collaboration goes, I also did not have anything particular for this value. So yes, I think that's all our values, or at least the ones I had on my list.
Great. So, oh, I'm sorry. Someone,
That, yeah, can I just say, then I guess I want to ask, I guess what I'm not clear about at the moment is if this body as a collective has agreed that the methodology that you're going to use moving forward is to use your values as your kind of guiding stars and apply data principles or data metrics under each one of them. And where there are none, are you okay leaving them blank and just filling in under the values that you have data for? Or is there going to be a continued conversation about making sure there's a data application under each one? I'm not suggesting either way. I just want to be clear about what we're drafting for you all.
Yeah, I think personally, I would say like the ones that there are clear qualitative and quantitative data around, that those are the ones that we can have things, and the other ones around like transparency and collaboration inform how we do the work, but don't necessarily need a data point, but are still like a value that we live in.
That makes sense to me. I would offer that if anyone thinks of some data points or, you know, give more thought to this conversation, please send them my way as soon as possible. And I will work to collect all the different things that you want to see and apply, and we'll produce a document for you to review as a whole.
So I just want to remind everyone about what our schedule is. Can everyone hear me? Great. So May 9th, which is coming up, we will then, begin recapping the research, and Jamie is going to be really busy inviting invited guests. Also, then on the 23rd, we will also have additional analysis and invited guests. And then May 30th, the idea is that there would be a draft recommendation from you all. And then we would release the final draft in June with a final vote in July. So that's part of the reason why we were working really quickly tonight to come up with a methodology, so that you can then have enough information so that you can make a decision. So I just want to recap to Jamie's point. We're all in agreement with the proposed methodology and the principles that have been laid out. Yes. Great. And there may be others as a result of you getting more information. So Jamie, just a point of clarification. We're running ahead of schedule. And our public comment period is supposed to begin at 7:25.
Well, the one person who has signed up for public comment is in attendance, and so we could certainly hear from them. Are we running so far ahead of schedule that we're done with this meeting? Is that what it looks like right now?
Yes.
I think we
Yes.
thought this methodology conversation was going to take a lot longer, y'all.
Go us.
Are you sure you don't want to talk about it some more?
Well, I mean, maybe like having heard what I was spitballing, we could find some like either additional things you'd like to try, or we could, you'd be like, not that one, but that one was okay.
Why, what would really help me, and apologies, I don't want to belabor the point if you are all ready to be done with this conversation. I found it to move really quickly, and I was a little confused about what we were agreeing on and not agreeing on in terms of each of those pieces. Would it be okay with the commission if we started back at the first value and made a solid list and inventory of the data that you want to apply and the speakers that you want to hear from, so that we make sure we have it accurately in our notes? It's also giving you a chance to think about it and see it in its entirety, the picture in its whole. Is that okay to do? I see, yes, I'd appreciate that. Is anyone like, heck no, move on, we're done? Not seeing that either, okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Angers, are you okay with that if we go back? I just,
Oh, for sure. Like, I don't want to be fully responsible for picking the data points.
the issue is that, you know, what we need to do tonight is all like settle on the data that you want to use. You don't have to decide how necessarily, you know, that data is gonna like inform your, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna use
Yeah.
this to use, but we need to settle on it because the very next meeting that we have is when we are gonna have invited guests. We are gonna have some analysis applied. So we have to be super set tonight and solid tonight about where we are and what we're using and maybe even what we're not using. And it's not that that can't be flexible and change over time, but we need to be set enough tonight that we have real material and people for you to talk to come May 9th.
And when I was going through it, it seems like the anti-racism, equity, and fiscal responsibility values are the ones that are going to have more quantitative and qualitative data associated with them. And then the communication, transparency, and collaboration are just the way that we're going to do them. Does that track with everyone else's understanding after going through the slides? There's like nothing.
Thank you. I think that part of what would be good and healthy in terms of accountability is to still have data attached to those values, but part of that data is the process for creating the commission. Who is participating, what are the perspectives represented, the level of participation in public comment. So all of those things are more process, and we are doing them, we're living them. So I think that data would be important as accountability, and to make sure that we feel with integrity in saying, yes, that is in fact what we did.
I think that's a good point because part of the last task that you will accomplish together after you pass your salary proposal will be to document the way in which you did that. And so these will be very important narratives to make sure are included. I do just want to, and I'm not suggesting that this has been said, but we do have to be careful about setting any methodology that counters what is written in charter about how the salary commission is formed and when and those kinds of things. It's pretty brief, so it's, you know, but we can't make any decisions that would run counter to what's written in charter. Okay, so we're starting with anti-racism. Commissioner Angers, can you do me a favor and start with a list of the data that we've already received that you think would apply here?
I think the article that we received around anti-oppressive pay.
Does everyone agree with that? Okay. What I'm going to suggest, because we're kind of using FISTA 5, is that if anyone is a solid no, put a 0 in the chat and it will we'll know that we're stopping. Does that reflect the intent of FISTA 5, Commissioner Martinez?
That depends if we are encouraging discussion. So sometimes when there's a 1 or 2 or 3, then we know that we need to have to engage in dialogue.
Okay.
So it's not exactly in the value, but these are I guess my question is, what is the decision that you want to have us decide on?
I want everyone to decide on what is data that you want to use as data points for sure in your methodology. What are additional data sets you don't have, but you want to consider so that we can bring them in at some point? And specifically, who you want us to reach out to, and who do you want to hear from? So if we go under each one of those, and I guess we don't have to do, like the specific number if thumbs up is okay in the situation. What I'm trying to ensure is that we're not moving too quickly and we're not allowing for people who might have concern or consideration about these data points.
Yeah, I think that we're not necessarily reaching a consensus, but you're checking if everybody's okay. So I think thumbs up, or if someone's thumbs down, or I need to have more questions, would be more appropriate than engaging in a fist of five for this purpose.
Okay, that sounds good. So article on anti-oppressive pay.
There's some data that is not specific to the city of Portland, and that we may want to consider are the trends in pay gap based on the populations that are listed in our values that we are prioritizing.
I want to check with Barb. Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what's being asked?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other data that you have already received from Barb and the BHR team that you think could apply to this particular value?
So one of the pieces of data that Commissioner Martinez requested was a comparative analysis between mayors, city councils based on their demographics in comparison to the city or region as a whole.
Thank you, Amber, for remembering that.
And this is Barb Seckles here from BHR. I will say that we will do our best to gather that information. Yeah, we have had some difficulty in finding a source to help us.
I can
What's
help
the
you.
word?
I can help
Great.
you with our.
Fantastic.
I also want to suggest, is this the place where the information you received about the living wage versus the thriving wage would be appropriate, or is that in another value?
I might put that under equity.
Okay.
That was under equity.
Oh, okay. We'll wait till we get
And
there.
well, and there's some things that can be on both places, right? Because there's data that will serve across several values. That I think it'd be great to keep track of what is informing what. Would that be okay with folks?
Yeah. And I think it's not data to request. We already have that data. The BHR already gave it to us.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's writing. Yeah, there you go. Cut and paste it out
Thanks.
of there. Thank you. Okay, one last call for any data points you want to make sure is noted in the chart before we ask about speakers. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, so let's make sure we have a solid list. There were multiple kind of things thrown out there before, but no kind of consensus or agreement on what sounded good. So for speakers or experts to invite about anti-racism, who would you like us to contact?
Well, there is a circle of practitioners that I'm part of, and there's a good number of equity and racial justice practitioners that are within nonprofits and government. This is sponsored by Western State Centers. And is Yiwang Chong and Amy, and I cannot remember her last name, are the coordinators. So we could solicit maybe Amy or Yiwang to present, or to ask folks from the Circle of Practitioners. We're called Northwest Equity and Racial Justice Leaders.
And what would they provide to the commission?
They are practitioners on anti-racism and equity, so both values. And some of them are also HR practitioners, or are engaged in HR and addressing compensation gaps based on race and other aspects of systemic injustices.
Okay, so they could speak broadly to the issues of race and equity and compensation to help further understand the topic. Okay.
Yes.
Does that sound good to everyone on the commission? In terms of important information? Great. Seeing a lot of nods and thumbs up. Okay. Who else?
I know folks from out of state, so I don't know how relevant, but they are better. They have a more focused understanding of anti-racism practices and equity practices in compensation. Would we be interested in hearing experts from out of state?
Would they be providing different information than the Northwest Racial Equity and Justice Leader Network? I'm only trying to hone us in because we have only 3 meetings to invite
Right.
testimony, and
No, I think that it's okay.
would it be similar?
Well, they are the experts, not me, on many of these things, or I greater expertise. But I think so.
Okay.
And in terms of efficiency, I think the Circle of Practitioners would yield us some good perspective.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sampson?
Yeah, Jamie, you had mentioned opportunity to serve, and that they are specifically discussing legislator pay in Oregon. I would love to hear from them, and that seems extremely relevant.
Okay. Does everyone agree with that? I see thumbs up, nods. Fantastic. Thank you. Does that feel like enough for this value, or should we move on, or is there more that we feel we're missing?
Seem like some good perspectives.
Okay, next, thank you. All right, let's make a list. What data have we received that serves as metrics for the equity value? We have living wage versus thriving wage. Maybe we only need one.
Well, again, this is the trends. Like I mentioned, for the first value for anti-racism, trends in gaps, salary compensation gaps in national, could be specific, but a lot of that data is mostly national. I think that would be very valuable in terms of including other aspects of identity that also are historically undercompensated and underrepresented in government.
Okay. That would be a data to request, is that right?
That is correct.
And that's what you had mentioned on the previous page. I just want to be clear that that's the same.
That's right.
Same data set. Okay.
And this is Barb again from BHR. I just would invite Commissioner Martinez or any of the commissioners, if they have particular sources that they are interested in us investigating, we are happy to do that. Also happy to, conduct our own research, but certainly want to invite all of you to provide any information or sources that you would like us to bring forward.
Are we comfortable with this data? Not seeing any other suggestions with speakers or experts to invite. Is this where Emerge would
Yeah.
be listed? Okay. Let's include Emerge Oregon. And I want to be clear, are you asking for the executive director of Emerge to come and talk to you broadly about trends that they see? Or are you asking us to ask Emerge to identify particular candidates or, potential candidates who have experienced pay inequities in elected office?
I think it could, I think it could be both and, so, someone to speak to kind of like the broader trends that they see when working with candidates, as well as candidates speaking to their experience, whether they had, like whether the pay was enough. I heard, Commissioner Johnson's point before that the running for office, like that's not necessarily what we're addressing, but definitely like once you're in office, whether you feel like that's a wage that supports you and you can still, do the work that you want to do.
Like
Without
there are
needing
candidates who took the training and were like, felt like they, were
Yeah,
really interested, but were like,
yeah,
I can't.
yeah.
leave. Gotcha.
Yeah, like at what like wage was that at? Because we know what the current
Yeah.
commissioners make, but if we're gonna set a new level, like what level that they would need to feel like it was competitive to run compared to whatever work that they were currently doing, or competitive enough for their living, like needs. I think that would be valuable information from my perspective.
Well, I believe Emerge trains candidates for statewide offices as well. So there's probably a variety of perspectives that could be provided there.
Yeah, and maybe they could, if they had a candidate in mind who had experience in like the Portland area, that would be great.
Commissioner Martinez, you are okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I want to suggest here too that there have been local electeds that have been offered in terms of being able to invite to the commission, like current elected officials in other jurisdictions, not in the city of Portland, who experience pay inequities, and who, are candidates mostly from the east side of Portland. And so I'm wondering if you would be interested. I don't want to say their name on public record. I guess that's why I'm being coy, because we haven't reached out to them. We haven't, done
Jamie,
any of that.
I was thinking the exact same thing of I don't want to volunteer someone before I've asked them, but I also know a sitting elected who is of color and has another full-time job and all of the different things. And I've casually talked to him about this, but I think he could have some really great insight to share. But I also know that it's complicated by virtue of being sitting in office, making future decisions about whether to run, is getting, because we all are not in conflict as we make decisions on salary, but getting input from electeds and potential future candidates, that's not a conflict. We're okay with that.
I can check with the city attorney, but I believe that the conflict of interest, in this case, because there would be a financial incentive, we wouldn't want to invite anyone that we know is going to be running for city council, is currently running or on city council, but I imagine elected leaders from other jurisdictions fall outside of that conflict of interest, circle. I can certainly follow up with our city attorney just to make sure, but I believe that to be true. So for now, maybe we can just list current elected leaders in other jurisdictions, and we can have a follow-up conversation to name names off the record so that we can follow up and invite.
Thank you. And would it be also possible for some folks to then offer their perspective as a public comment anonymously?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Jamie and commissioners, we should probably pause for public comment, and then if there's no other, after we go through the one public comment, we can come back to this topic.
That's great. Thank you. So everyone's okay with that? We're going to pause for public comment. I'm not meaning to facilitate, but I want to make sure, Liam, you can invite the.
I am on it.
Thank you.
All right, so.
We have the time.
Set up.
I don't see it in the attendee, so I probably did it wrong. So I will keep time on my phone. How about that?
All right, before we get started, I'm just going to make a few remarks. We're now going to take public comment. Community members have the opportunity to sign up to make a public comment on the website. We're first going to call on folks who have signed up, and if there's anyone else listening that would like to testify, you can do so by letting the staff know, but raise your hands or putting your name in the Zoom Q&A. When it's your turn to testify, we'll bring you in the main room and you'll have 2 minutes to share your thoughts. Please manage your time. I will have to stop you if you exceed the 2-minute mark. And there's no one in person, correct?
There is no one here.
Okay, great. Let's call in the first person.
All right, thanks, Amber. Our first comment is from Vicky Payne. Vicky, if you want to unmute, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. First, I just want to make a quick comment that your last meeting, you still don't have the video posted. So just FYI there. I was able to look through some notes since I didn't get to watch the meeting. I liked the League of Women Voters suggestion about trying to do a higher compensation to open the door for a range of people to run. And you gals have been doing a great job of covering that tonight. And obviously you're having deep discussions about that, so that's great. The League of Women Voters also mentioned that the confirmation of the salary commission stated this would be a full-time job. I don't necessarily disagree, and I don't know that you guys necessarily have the power here either, but something to think about, making sure we can mandate a 40-hour work week if that's the case, including office hours, to make sure the public is receiving the engagement that they expected. Alternately, or along the same lines, really digging into the equity discussion you gals are having. The Charter Commission possibly appears to have overlooked section 2-204 of the charter, which, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't have it pulled up. It says, shoot. No official appointed elected official shall, during the official's term or service, hold any other office or position of profit or pursue any other business or vocation or serve under any committee of any political party. So for example, especially speaking on equity, opening up roles to regular people, a construction worker in a trade union would have to leave the union and would not be able to do any side work. Washington County and Beaverton in particular, Multnomah County Commissioners and Metro Council, they all get to keep their day jobs. Is this something you guys get to decide on? Or is this something that has to be taken up with the city council? And then I would also imagine a clause needed to recuse yourself from any potential conflict of interest needs to be involved because there is currently an issue with Metro and 2 counselors in Metro having a big conflict of interest voting on things that they give money to their own nonprofits on. So we want to avoid that, obviously, but I think this would help you in your decisions, the discussions that you're having today to clear this up.
All right, Vicky, I have to put a pause to that. We reached the 2 minutes.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you.
Vicky, thank you for the comment about the presentation. It is online. It is listed under the previous event page where our meeting materials get posted. However, if you're looking in a different place, if you could put in the Q&A, if there's another place where you usually look for that type of material, we're happy to make it more visible if it's hard to find. Commissioners, did you have any comment about public comment? And I don't see anyone else here.
So Vicky did respond in the Q&A. That is where I am looking and it's not there. And the notes are missing that portion as well.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, this occurred to me earlier after reading through the League of Women Voters letter. I'm not sure where we do this, but at some point, I think it is, and certainly Vicky just brought this up, perhaps we need to explicitly state that at this point, we don't assume that these are anything but full-time positions, that we have no intention of changing them from to a part-time position, so that if this is a concern to people, if that's what we agree to, that we are explicit about it. And I don't know where in our process we want to do that, or if we should, but if we could bookmark that, if we need to do it, other people agree with that, I'm perfectly comfortable to say that, make it clear, have it on the record sooner rather than later, so that we don't have other people concerned that we're somehow going to change that. Because I don't think that was something that we never discussed, making these anything less than full-time.
Commissioner? Commissioner Medras?
Yeah, just a reflection on the public comment that was just shared. I do think it is, I don't think we actually have the power to do anything about it, but I think it's worth noting that our task is to make an equitable salary for the time in office. And yet, by virtue of that requirement to not have another source of income, there's a huge opportunity cost for a lot of folks who do not have the flexibility to leave their jobs for 2 years and go back to something as reliable, or if they're in a union. And so I think that that's just an inherent conflict in how it's been set up, where we have to determine what is equitable in a very unique situation in which someone can excuse themselves from their full-time role to run. And I don't think we have the power to change that requirement of no other income sources. Jamie's shaking her head, so absolutely not. But I think we have to reckon with that of there's a huge opportunity cost for someone, let's use the example of in a union, to leave their job for multiple years. Do we have then a responsibility to account for that opportunity cost in the salary to make it an equitable opportunity and quote unquote worthwhile to serve your community in the role? Or does it just need to be a year-to-year analysis of, is this an equitable salary for the year, and not take into account that someone needs to have a very particular flexible type of career to leave and go back to? I think it's just another complicating piece that we do not have the ability to change on the requirement, but should take into account if we are making this truly equitable.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, I think I watched the meeting when we were all appointed, and one of the council members, and I can't remember which one it was, it might have been Councilmember Gonzalez, who raised that question in terms of, will these be full-time, will this be compensation for full-time positions? And did they need to look at and revisit the idea that people might not be able to afford to run for office or hold office if the compensation committee did not provide an equitable salary, or if they decided at some level that the position should be changed to part-time. And Councilmember Rubio also mentioned that if it was necessary, she would be happy to talk to people about her perception of it being a full-time job. And I don't know how many other people were able to watch that council meeting when we were appointed, but those were issues that they were discussing. And again, I agree. I don't think we have the ability to determine. We can consider it, but depending on what the person's career is and how much they're compensated in their other position, if they have to take a leave of absence or their union doesn't allow them to do it, those salaries could be very different depending on what their actual other full-time job is that they're leaving in order to pursue public office. I think it's very complicated.
Commissioner Metros, did you have a follow-up?
No, just reflecting on the complexity of it. Oh, sorry, and my hand's still up, so I'll take that down. I don't have a follow-up, and I don't want us to solve for like very particular scenarios that we can never actually estimate. But I had not thought of the opportunity cost before, given the short-term nature of the position. And thanks to the public comment, I'm thinking of that now. I will figure out how to lower my hand.
If there are no other reflections, Jamie, do you want to go back to where we were?
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you so much. And just so everyone is aware, we did send Vicky the link to where the meeting materials are. It appears that we are not posting them in the same way that the IDC is posting them. And so we will fix that to make them more visible to the public. So I think we were, so under Emerge Oregon, we talked about inviting elected leaders in other jurisdictions. So let's make sure we write that down. I don't know who is taking notes right now, but thank you so much. Is this Ozzy?
Yes.
Ozzy, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's helped immensely. Anyone else you want to hear from? Commissioner Martinez, I see your hand up.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson just reminded us that Commissioner Rubio offered to speak to us on the subject of equitable pay for and representation in government, and I would like to add her in this in the list.
Well, let's talk about this because you'll need to consider this carefully. As an independent commission, I think you want to ensure that you are not being unduly pressured by current elected leadership, right? Which I see you nodding. You recognize that dilemma. It is entirely possible. Commissioner Rubio is not the only one who has offered to come and speak to the commission. And so I guess I want to suggest, would you like to hear from, or at least extend the offer to all of the current seated elected officers or elected commissioners? Would you like to ask them to attend in person to hear from them? Or would you like to ask them to perhaps contribute a memo about their thoughts that you can think about, consider, and deliberate without them present? We would have to obviously craft it very carefully. We might, if there, if all of them want to, and you want to extend invitation to all of them, we might have to create some additional meetings to fit them in, some like subgroup meetings to hear from them. And we could not obviously invite all of them at the same time. We would have to have 2 or fewer at a time. So we could avoid a quorum.
Thank you, Jamie. To the question, my question is if I want to hear from all of them, my answer is no. My answer is I want to particularly hear from folks that represent communities that are historically marginalized, because it's about equity, right? So I think that the offer of then having them submit a memo that is revised, I think would be a safer way, or at least for me. And that is approved, or there's a process, right, that is provides more accountability. That would be okay with me.
Commissioner Johnson?
I think if we're going to solicit any kind of feedback, I think we have to ask everybody to provide feedback. And I think the written memo, of course, would be preferable than testimony, but I don't know that we could single anybody out, because I think I just think I think we need to ask everybody if they have any thoughts or they have any information they'd like to share with us. And they will provide whatever information they want, and they can do it however that invitation is crafted, so that we make sure that we're doing it carefully. I'm sort of ambivalent about taking their testimony, because they are right now, although they all have to run again, as I understand it, they are interested parties in terms of what is ultimately decided in terms of salaries. And so I'm ambivalent. So that's what I could come up with.
Commissioner Medras?
Just in response, I would disagree. I do think the charter's mandate is figuring out how to bring equity into the representation of the future future council. And to do that, we need to attract and recruit more diverse candidates. And so I think our charge is to hear disproportionately from underrepresented groups, so that then what we decide starts to get to an equitable balance, because so many of council members in the past have been there because the salary has been okay. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we're getting more representation ahead, and therefore should be hearing more directly from those who have not been on council in the proportions that we want them to. So in terms of giving voice to getting input and giving voice to opinions, I do think we need to disproportionately focus on underrepresented folks and people of color.
I have Commissioner Johnson.
I just wanted to say my concern was the city people sitting on the council. Now, I'm very comfortable with hearing from people whose experience has made it difficult for them to run for office, and we are trying to make changes in terms of equity. I'm just, in terms of singling out an individual 1 or 2 council members for their opinion, I think to be fair, we have to ask the whole council for their feedback. It's up to them whether they want to share it with us or not. But certainly other members of the community, people who've tried to run for office, or there've been barriers to it, I'd certainly want to hear from them. It's just the sitting council right now I'd be concerned about just saying 1 or 2, give us your feedback, and not asking everybody.
I have a potential suggestion to offer to maybe accommodate both needs here. You could choose to extend an invitation to Commissioner Rubio under the value of equity to come speak to the commission, so you can have a direct conversation with her. And you could also choose under the value of fiscal responsibility, invite the rest of the commissioners to write a memo, to provide a memo to all of you about their opinion about the current salaries and their experiences there. That way you are extending an offer to hear from all of them, but you are also highlighting the need to hear from a more diverse elected body in terms of the value of equity.
Would we also ask Commissioner Maps to do the same thing?
That is up to this body.
And when you suggest to have a direct invitation, for example, to Commissioner Rubio, you mean to invite Commissioner Rubio to attend the meeting and speak to the value of equity? Or were you suggesting we speak individually to be informed by her perspectives?
I was reflecting what I thought I was hearing the request was, which was to invite Commissioner Rubio to come to testify, to speak to the commission directly. If you want to do it in another format, that's obviously perfectly appropriate. Is that what you meant, Commissioner Martinez? Did I? Okay.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Okay. Commissioner Gill?
Yeah, I think I would feel more comfortable not having it live, and I'd rather everything stick to memos. I do feel like I'm concerned that we will be overstepping the political part, as you explained earlier. It's just my opinion.
Other commissioners we haven't heard from, you want to weigh in here? Commissioner Cooney?
Hi there. I just wanted to say I agree with that. I personally like the idea of memos where we have some time to both craft our requests carefully. They're able to respond in a similar manner, and it gives us some time to absorb the information in a thoughtful way, where I think in a live situation that might not be quite as effective.
So in sensing we're moving in the direction of asking every elected commissioner to submit a memo to the body to be considered. Commissioner Martinez, do you feel comfortable with that suggestion, or do you want to continue to advocate for a direct conversation?
No, I think that a memo would be great. I think it's the safest for all parties. I think that we can invite all of them to speak to this different values. In that way, we can get very focused answers from each of them. So I think that if we have a request that speaks to and lists these values, and that we would like to hear from them optionally, freely, voluntarily, to submit a memo to this body for consideration, that'd be great.
Just looking to see if there's any additional thoughts. I see some thumbs up. Are there any volunteers that would like to draft the request to the commission? It should come from you as a body, so. Is anyone willing to draft a letter?
I would be very happy to help draft something. I would like to request support from either Jamie or Amber. Perhaps we could schedule a time to meet, and I can have a little something that is not a blank canvas, and we can go from there. Is that okay?
I'm also happy to help with that too.
But sounds to me, oh, Commissioner Cooney, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead and finish that. It's a slightly different thought on this. I can wait a moment.
It sounds to me that Commissioner Martinez would appreciate having a draft to work with, a first draft to kind of work off of. Is that correct, Commissioner Martinez?
Oh, well, if they're offering, what I actually offered is that I can get it started and then finish it together.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like Commissioner Johnson is also willing to do that. So Commissioner Martinez, if you're willing to put together a first draft and send to me, I can certainly I can certainly work with you and Commissioner Johnson and Amber and the team to get it to a place where we can get approval by the commission to send it out. Okay, that sounds great. Commissioner Cooney?
I just wanted to double check on the last slide. Had we decided not to invite elected leaders from other jurisdictions, or is that something we still wanted to get input on? I think I was hearing that folks thought there were some more diverse perspectives that we might be able to get in that situation. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't cross that out if it wasn't off the table.
Good catch. Thank you. Yes, we did not take that off of the list. Thank you, Ozzy. Okay, do we feel like we've reached a happy medium with that question about how we communicate? Oh, I just want to double check. Okay, so we talked about commissioners. We did not specifically mention the mayor, nor did we mention the auditor's office. Would you like to extend an invitation to submit a memo to them as well? I'm looking at yeses, thumbs up. Okay, got it. The whole body will all get a letter. They will be happy to hear it. I know they have been really very interested in providing their perspectives. So thank you very much, commissioners. So do we feel comfortable with where we're at with this equity value and ready to talk about fiscal responsibility? I guess a quick time check. We went from being really early to now having to extend the meeting potentially. Is everyone, do I have a quorum of commissioners willing to extend the meeting? I expect maybe another 20-30 minutes at most. Commissioner Martinez is a yes. See thumbs up. Okay. Thank you so much for your patience. I apologize for those who thought they had some time back tonight. Okay, and I think it is, if I remember correctly, fiscal responsibility is the last one where we felt we had some potential data points. So we might be done after this one, or if am I remembering that incorrectly? Commissioner Martinez, you were suggesting maybe there were data we should discuss for each of them.
Yeah, but my suggestion was that we can do it in between meetings, because this is not something that necessarily changes future work.
Okay, gotcha. Commissioner Johnson?
I have a quick question for Barb, if she can pull this together probably fairly quickly. Could you send us the additional percentage cost that you calculate into wages that represents the benefits? So the OPE, if someone makes, you know, their wages, what addition is the total compensation with the benefit package that the elected and the employees, non-represented employees make with the city? You may even know that number off the top of your head.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson, I think it's around 38%, but I'll confirm.
Okay, because that needs to be also looked at, I think, in terms of total compensation is, I think, something that we need to actually look at aside from just the plain salary. So thank you.
So is that data to request total compensation? Can you say that again in a way that so you can type it?
The additional percentage that benefits represent to the base salary, which is essentially total comp. The catch-all is total compensation, but
he's got it. Okay.
yeah, for benefit package.
Okay.
Thank you.
What are other data points that you have already received that fit under this value that you want to make sure is considered in your methodology?
The current salaries for all of these folks, as well as the cost of living adjustments if they would have occurred. And the percentage that this represents out of the city spending. They're like 3 different charts.
We
And-
have,
You
Oh, sorry,
received those
I was gonna say, yeah, they're in the
Okay.
BHR notes.
That
That
was
was
this third one. What was the third one?
the third one. So there was the cost of living adjustments, the total, or the current salaries, as well as the percentage that the current salaries represented in the budget. And Commissioner Sampson, I cut you off.
oh no, you're good. We've also received, I think it would fit here. I don't know where else it would fit, but some of the external research that's been done. And then we've requested some additional external research. So what other cities are paying their mayors, council members, whether or not they have commissions. So that data was submitted from our prior meeting, and then Barb will look into the first list of cities and geographically adjust and gather that data as well.
And it was included as a link in the BHR notes from this time, but there was a link to the it's the city budget office, the 2022 city charter reform costing summary. Just what the city's the budget office is currently thinking, knowing that those are numbers that could change.
That's in the data you've already received.
It is.
Can you?
You could say it's the 2022 city charter reform costing summary city budget office. And I'll drop it back in the chat just so you know what I'm referencing.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, actually, that first line, the total compensation above base salary, that needs to go into the data to request box, since we don't have it yet.
Okay, any other thoughts about data?
I think it'd be useful to include the link to the cities. I think I sent it in an email to Damian Amber, the city fiscal responsibility definition. I think some of the language that we used was from there.
Mhm.
And it also strengthens the alignment with the city's values.
Yeah, you sent it to me, but I don't think I sent it out in the materials, right? So we'll keep it under data to request so I can remember to send it out to everyone.
Okay.
Anything else? Feels like a pretty solid set of information. What about speakers or experts to invite for fiscal responsibility?
So wasn't there something for this one under cost of living? Or am I not remembering that correctly?
There is it's the cost of living adjustments is the second
Sorry.
line on the data
Okay.
received. Yeah.
Oh, I saw Commissioner Cooney and then I didn't see Commissioner Cooney. Oh,
So I was going to say related to that, I don't know if it would make sense to also reference data received as the cost of living versus the thriving wage versus, living wage. I don't know if we would want to also include that under our data received.
sure.
Yeah, it can definitely show up in multiple places for sure.
I'm wondering if this is a better the fiscal responsibility is a better place to park the invitation to the current elected body. Instead of under equity. To me, it makes more sense under fiscal responsibility, but it's up to you.
Well, my note was that I would be drafting to request all of them to submit a memo referencing all values of the commission's methodology.
Okay.
So it would include, we could just, copy and paste for all of
Just
them.
put them in all of it. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great way to approach that. Are there any other expertise, invited speakers you would like to suggest for fiscal responsibility?
I don't know if this would be a good idea because again, could be conflicted. But past city auditors, is that possible? Is there a potential conflict there?
I don't think so, as long as they are not currently serving or have announced or are currently running for future office, auditor office or whatever. Again, I will double check that with our city attorney, but I believe that would be perfectly appropriate. And what is the invitation to past city auditors? What is the specific information you would like to receive from them?
My curiosity is about how, from their perspective, we can leave the value of fiscal responsibility. What are some perhaps aspects of their perspective that we might not have access to because we've never been auditors of the city? Well, I haven't, my statements. So that is my main curiosity.
Makes sense. Thank you. Commissioner Johnson? You are muted, Commissioner.
Is there somebody from the budget office who could come speak about maybe the budget forecasting or just overall the how they look at the budget and any thoughts they might have? I think it would be smart on our part and to have some perspective from not only human resources, but also the people who work with the city budget.
Yes, I think we could definitely find somebody to come speak to you about that.
Just an overall sort of, and sort of what the outlook is. I mean, I think we, from strategic and a responsible point of view for this value, I think we need to look at that.
Everyone agree with that? So a thumbs up, seeing some heads nods. Okay. Anything else? I think this might be the last one that we are going to apply some very specific follow-ups to tonight, at least. The rest seem like we are going to be focusing on in our kind of documentation process around how we accomplish those specific values within the work. I say we, how you accomplish those specific values within the work. Forgive me. Okay. Does everyone feel like everyone understands what the direction we're going in with the methodology? What comes next? Anything left unsaid about this particular task? All right. Thank you very much for indulging me in that and going back. I'm going to turn it back over to Amber now to lead us through the end.
All right, our next meeting. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ozzy. Our next meeting is Tuesday, May 9th. The meeting will include public comment. So before we get ready to adjourn, are there any other additional requests? We went through a lot tonight, so I think we could be requested out.
Oh, there's one thing I did want to let you all know. You know, we have a very active comms team who is trying really hard to communicate about all the different aspects of the work. Part of that is they're putting together, you know, some like one-pager materials, or putting together some external newsletter articles about this commission and others. I will probably be coming to you, probably start with the co-chairs for quotes and things like that. But they were also interested in whether or not this commission wanted to meet in person at least one time to make it a little easier to get some pictures of the commission and the work that you're doing. I see some squeamishness, but we would definitely appreciate that. It would enhance our ability to get this information out to the public. And this is not the giant room we'll be meeting in, so you won't have to come to this cavernous space. There's another room on the first floor of the Portland building that we'd be meeting in, but if not May 9th, then perhaps another meeting. I just want to put that on your radar, and we'll probably be following up with some, you know, to see what date works for all of you in terms of being able to come in, or all of you are like, no, thank you. Is there anyone, I guess I'll pose this question. Is there anyone that's like a hard no? Like, heck no, you cannot make me come in. If so, it's perfectly okay. I'm scrolling through the faces. I see no hard no's, so I'm excited. And I know our comms team will be excited as well. We'll find a time that works for you all.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Tammy?
No, thank you so much.
All right, I think our meeting is adjourned.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Have a great night. Thank you.